The first time he winked at the camera in a courtroom, the internet loved him for it. They clipped it, looped it, turned it into a meme. The golden boy who doesn't care. The athlete who beats the system with a smile. For a while, that was his entire identity. Speed, fame, arrogance, and the quiet assumption that the rules were for slower people. Not for him, not for Tyler Kane. He was a star before he could legally drink, a college phenomenon turned professional prodigy. National team, global tournaments, shoe deals, billboards, commercials. He wasn't the best in the world, but he was close enough, fast enough, marketable enough, and just reckless enough to stay constantly in the headlines. The brands loved that about him, until the night the headline wasn't about a game. It was about a crash. The street camera footage was grainy, but the sound cut through everything. Screams, metal, then silence. It was past midnight. The city was half asleep, half drunk. Tyler had left a private event, a sponsorship party where the champagne flowed harder than the water. He had a custom sports car waiting, black, low, predatory. It looked like motion even when it was parked. Witnesses said he laughed when someone asked if he was good to drive. "Relax," he'd replied, waving them off. "Do you know who I am?" He wasn't lying. They did. Everyone did. He shot out of the garage like a bullet. No one saw the exact moment it happened, only the aftermath. 2 cars, one folded almost in half. The other, Tyler's, skidded sideways into a streetlight. Airbags exploded, engine still snarling. In the smaller car, there was a family. Mother, father, a boy. He was 12. His name was Owen. He survived. Barely. The parents didn't. The city woke up to flashing blue lights and sirens echoing across its main boulevard. The next morning, Tyler's face was everywhere. Not sweaty from victory, not grinning for a brand. Blank, lit by a police station's fluorescent glare. For the first time, he wasn't trending for a highlight reel. He was trending for a mugshot. The first hearing was chaos. Cameras crowded the steps. Fans arrived with posters reading "Free TK." Some wore his jersey. Some cried. Others shouted at anyone who dared speak against him. They didn't see the hospital room. They didn't see Owen. They didn't see the 2 empty beds on either side of him. They saw their hero in handcuffs and decided who the victim was. Not the dead, the detained. By the time Tyler walked into Judge Joseph Wapner's courtroom weeks later, he had become 2 different people depending on who you asked. To his followers, he was the misunderstood champion being targeted for his success. To the family of the dead, he was the driver who had turned their lives into a ruin with a single drunken decision. He thought he knew which version of himself would win, because his side had money, lawyers, publicists, spin, and the other side had only grief. He was wrong. Because this time, he wasn't dealing with a referee. He was dealing with Joseph Wapner. And Wapner did not play games. Tyler entered the courtroom, flanked by attorneys and security. Even in a suit, he looked like an athlete. Tall, defined, built on discipline and worship. Dark hair styled back, sharp jaw, tan skin marked now by a fading bruise near un tempo from the night of the crash. His eyes were bright, lively, too lively for someone facing what he was facing. As he walked in, he smirked. Just a little. Enough. The cameras caught it. They always did. He scanned the gallery. There were fans here, too. Some in his jersey. Some holding folded papers for him to sign, if he had time after. Their presence fed him. He rolled his shoulders back, rolled his neck, the way athletes do before a crucial moment, like he was stepping onto a field, not into judgment. He took his seat at the defense table with lazy confidence, leaning back, legs apart, owning space he did not own. He glanced toward the prosecution side, toward the front row, where a boy sat between two other adults. Owen, thinner now, colorless, a cast on one arm, scars near his hairline, clothes too big for his shrunken frame. He clutched a crumpled baseball cap, his father's, someone had said, as if it was the last solid thing he had. He didn't look at Tyler. He stared straight ahead, eyes not really seeing the wood grain of the bench, but something else, a street, lights, the impossible noise of a life coming apart. Tyler's jaw twitched when he saw him, just for a moment. Then he looked away, back to where the cameras were. Judge Wapner entered. All rise. Everyone stood. Everyone, including Tyler, though he did it like he was honoring a national anthem he didn't really care about. Another formality, another pregame ritual. The judge took his seat. The room settled, but the air did not. The air thickened, weighted with something heavier than drama, responsibility. The charges were read: vehicular manslaughter, driving under the influence, reckless endangerment, probation violation. This wasn't his first legal problem. There had been warnings, speeding citations that never made the news, nightclub fights quietly buried by teams of lawyers, a hit-and-run rumor that never stuck. Each time he'd been shielded by teams, by brands, by people who saw his speed and thought it gave him more value than the rules. "We'll handle it," his manager always said, and they did. Fines, settlements, non-disclosure agreements. He had never truly felt a boundary. When the words manslaughter hit the air, his lips tightened. It was the only charge he didn't know how to turn into a joke. Still, his lawyer had a plan. He always did. The prosecution went first. They laid out the facts cleanly. No theatrics. Time of night, blood alcohol level, witnesses. Tyler had been well over the limit. His car had been well over the speed limit. There was no debate. He'd run a red light. The smaller car had been already in the intersection. No sudden swerve, no mechanical failure, just impact. They presented the black box data from his vehicle, speed, brake application. There had been no attempt to slow down until a fraction of a second before the collision. Too late, always too late. They submitted text records from that night, messages to friends, to his agent, selfies from the back seat of the car he took to the event, story posts of bottles, flashing lights, a caption, "I drive better drunk than most people do sober." The jury that would have been present in a different court wasn't there, but the audience was. The cameras were. The court of public opinion was waiting. When the prosecutor mentioned the age of the boy in the smaller car, some people in the gallery looked at Owen. He remained still, like a statue someone had carved out of what was left of him. Then they read out his injuries: broken bones, internal bleeding, night terrors, therapy. Silence clung to the walls. You could hear every breath, every shift in every seat. When the prosecutor sat, the expectation rose, because now it was time. Time for the Golden Boy's machine to begin its spin. Tyler's attorney stood with measured grace, older, expensive, polished. He began not with excuses, but with admiration. He talked about Tyler's achievements, his discipline, the millions of kids who looked up to him, the charity work, the hospital visits, the foundation in his name. He turned him from a defendant back into a hero, or tried to. Then he leaned into narrative, pressure, expectations. He spoke of road trips starting when Tyler was 10, of his parents pouring everything into his training, of always being watched, always being branded, never allowed to be normal. He turned him into a victim of his own success, A boy consumed by a system that chewed him up for entertainment, then spit him out when he failed. He acknowledged wrongdoing. He had to. The evidence was too solid. But he framed it. A tragic mistake, a horrible lapse of judgment, a good man who did a terrible thing under the influence of too much alcohol and too much pressure. He used words like redemption, second chance, role model. He didn't use the words everyone else heard that night in their heads: impact, screams, death. He returned again and again to one idea: Tyler's platform. A long prison sentence, he said, does nothing for the community. But if Mr. Kane is allowed structured freedom, strict conditions, and treatment, he can use his visibility to educate young people, to speak out against drunk driving, to make a difference. We have in him an opportunity. He can turn this tragedy into a message, into change. He can save lives. Tyler bowed his head as his lawyer spoke. He even let his shoulders shake once, as if with emotion. He had rehearsed this. In the mirror, with his PR team, hands folded, eyes down, jaw clenched at the right moments. He knew exactly how to look sorry. He also knew, deep inside where the cameras couldn't see, that this was a still game to him. Win, he walks. Lose, and he sits. He was used to winning. He fully expected to do it again. Judge Wapner listened, expression unreadable. He had seen this angle before, many times, different faces, same strategy. Turn a person's fame from a liability into an asset. Turn their audience into leverage. Argue always that the law should bend porque so many people were watching. He let the defense finish. Let the finale "we ask for leniency" hung in the air. Then he shifted his attention. "Mr. Kane," he said calmly, "stand." Tyler rose. He did it like he was taking a free throw, footing solid, chin up, ready to perform. He glanced quick at his fans in the gallery, then at the cameras, then at the bench. This was the moment where, in every story he'd ever heard, charm mattered, tears mattered, name mattered. He opened his mouth to speak. Wapner held up a hand. "Not yet," he said. Tyler closed his mouth. The control he was used to wielding slipped a fraction. This wasn't a press conference. This wasn't his arena. "What I'm going to say," the judge began, "is not for the cameras. It's not for your sponsors, or your fans, or your critics. It is for the record, and it is for you." The room leaned in. That last part, for you, not your team, not your brand, you. "You have been presented here," Wapner continued, "as a role model who made a mistake, as someone who could use his story to reach millions." He glanced at the report in front of him. "At this moment," he said, "the only person you needed to reach was the one in that car." He nodded, just slightly, toward Owen. Tyler's eyes flickered. He followed the gaze. For a brief second, the illusion cracked. Porque in that boy's hollow stare, he saw something no branding campaign could fix. Loss, raw, unpackaged, unforgiving. "It is my duty," Wapner said, "to separate two things that your counsel has tried to blend: your fame and your responsibility." He let the word spread. Fame, responsibility, not synonyms, not here. "You are here," he went on, "porque você choseu a trancar. Você choseu a drivar. Você choseu a tratar a rua como seu próprio traque. Você choseu, em sinal vermelho, a acreditar em seus reflexos, seu talento e seu status, protegê-lo da física." He tapped the black box report. "Physics," he said coldly, "does not care who você é." A linha era brutal e verdade. Tyler's fingers twitched at his side. O smirk estava lá. A tensão em seu jowl não estava. Wapner flipped to another page. 3 meses antes desse crash, he continued, você foi citado por drivar over 20 miles per hour above the limit on this same boulevard. That ticket, he said, looking up, resultou não em uma consequência que mudou seu comportamento, mas em uma fina que seu management pagou, uma história que seu time espinou e um alerta que você não ouviu. He turned another page. A year before that, you were involved in an altercation outside a club in which a security guard was injured. There, too, settlement was quietly reached. Statements were made, promises forgiven. His eyes locked on Tyler. How many? He asked, voice calm but direct. Have you studied in a room like this or one like it and said you'd learned a lesson? Tyler swallowed. His throat moved once, hard. A few times, he muttered. Too many? Wapner asked. Silence. Then, yes. Then understand this, the judge said. At some point, Mr. Kane, it ceases to be a mistake and becomes your pattern. The words were like a hammer, not shouted, just delivered, heavy, irrefutable. In the back row, a man exhaled slowly through his teeth. He'd seen too many like Tyler, different uniforms, same entitlement. A woman near Owen dabbed at her eyes, an older relative perhaps, Dana's counterpart in another story, a real human anchor to the weight of this one man's choices. Tyler shifted again, his fingers flexed. He looked at his lawyer. The lawyer's expression was a neutral wall. There would be no rescue in his eyes, not now, not here. Your counsel has argued, Wapner continued, that your influence should be considered, that your capacity to speak to young people is a reason to minimize incarceration. He shook his head, slow, deliberate. That is an argument, he said, for privilege, not for justice. The gallery reacted, a few people nodding sharply. Online, later, those words would be pulled out, subtitled, set to somber music. Here, they just hung in the air like a verdict. You want to talk to young people? He went on. Then let this be the message they hear. When you kill 2 people with your car porque você recusou a pôr bocal de lado e o seu ego, você vai preso, não a pódium. Tyler's face changed. He'd always known prison was on the table, em aquele abstrato jeito em que pessoas imaginam que coisas ruins podem acontecer com elas. O jeito que você sabe que pode ser machucado em jogo, mas nunca acredite que seja este jogo, deste fall, deste osso. Agora era específico, pessoal, próximo. Você acha, Wapner said, que isso é ainda sua história, que você é o protagonista e isso é sua redenção arco. Na narrativa seu counsel has given, o boi ali, he glanced at Owen, é suportante caractere em seu comeback. Seus pais são final trágico. His eyes narrowed. In this courtroom, that is not how it works. He pointed, não com a mão, mas com a voz. This is not your story. This is theirs. The weight shifted. You could feel it. Tyler shrunk in that instant. Not in size, in importância. O inteiro home focou-se de repente por momento. Para o boy na bench. Para o espaço vazio onde seus pais deveriam ter. Para a irreversível natureza do que havia acontecido. Dessa foi a primeira real humilhação. Não pública, interna. Realizando que você não é, em fato, o sol. Just on a small, reckless satellite. Still, somewhere behind his fear, Tyler clung to one last rope, the one he'd always grabbed before. But my impact, his eyes seemed to plead. Don't you see what I can do? Wapner cut that rope himself. You have impact, he said. You know what else has impact? That car, at 80 milhas por hora, on a family driving home. He let the imagery hang, bruto e honest. You are not here, he repeated, because of who you are on posters. You are here because of what you did on that road. He lifted a copy of the victim impact statement Owen's aunt, or perhaps older cousin, had submitted. He didn't read all of it, just one line. He wakes up screaming, he read quietly. He asks where Mom and Dad went. Sometimes he remembers, sometimes he doesn't. Both are a different kind of hell. You could hear the sob Owen tried to swallow. It came out anyway, small, fractured, real. Tyler's head jerked involuntarily at the sound. It was like being hit himself, a strike he could not dodge. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the air seemed to hold back. Then Wapner set the paper down. His voice, when he spoke next, carried a finality that made the hair on the back of necks stand up. "Mr. Kane," he said, "you will not walk out of here with a fine and a program. You will not walk out of here on the strength of your endorsements or your apologies." He paused. "In this courtroom," he said softly, "you are not an athlete. You are not a hero. You are not a brand. You are a man who killed 2 people." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The quiet was a roar. Somewhere in the gallery, a fan in a Tyler Kane jersey took it off, slowly, folded it over their lap, stared at it like an object that had belonged to another life, another person, one they no longer recognized or could afford to worship. Tyler's chest heaved shallowly. His eyes shone, but the tears didn't fall. Not yet. Maybe later, in a smaller room, without cameras, when the echoes of those words followed him into a space where his sponsor logos didn't reach. "You will serve," Wapner said, naming the term, "a substantial period of incarceration in state custody." It was not symbolic, not light, not the minimum. It was real, long enough to erase seasons, contracts, momentum. It could end a career. It would alter a life. "You will also," he continued, "be barred for a significant period from operating any motor vehicle upon your release. Driving is not a right for you to abuse. It is a privilege you have lost through your own actions." He added conditions, mandatory treatment, speaking engagements not as a celebrity, but as part of restorative justice programs inside correctional facilities, under supervision, without pay, without branding. "You will not be rewarded," he said, "for what you did with a bigger platform. You will start, for once in your life, with less power than everyone around you, and you will learn to live there." The humiliation was complete. Not because he was screamed at, not because he was cursed, because he was brought down a level he'd always believed he had above. Just one more man in a line of men in jumpsuits, number instead of name, no cleats, no roar, no scoreboard, only time and consequence. The bailiff stepped forward. It was time. "Remand the defendant," Wapner said quietly. The words were routine. The effect was not. You could see it wash over Tyler's face. "This is happening. This is happening to you now." The cuffs went on, cold, impersonal. They snapped closed with a sound that would, later, replay in his mind at night like a looped highlight he could never outrun. He flinched, just a little. He looked over his shoulder one more time, at the gallery, at the cameras, at the door he would not be allowed to walk through freely again for a very, very long time. His eyes met Owen's. For the first time, the boy looked back properly. No fear, no curiosity, just a hollow, calm exhaustion that made him look older than his age. There was no forgiveness there, no hatred either. Just emptiness, absence, the shape of 2 parents who should have been in this room and were not. Tyler swallowed. His lips moved. No sound came out. No apology, no speech, nothing that could bridge the distance between them. The guards led him to the side door. Each step away from the life he knew felt like stepping into water that was getting deeper and colder with every foot. The door closed behind him with a soft, final click. No replay, no slow motion, just gone. Outside, the case tore through the feeds. Clips of Judge Wapner saying, "You are not here because of who you are on posters. You are here because of what you did on that road," played on every platform. The line about prison, not podiums, became a rallying cry. Commenters wrote about brothers, sisters, parents taken by drunk drivers. Stories poured out like wounds reopening. I've watched rich kids walk away from things like this my whole life. Today felt different. My uncle died the same way. No one went to jail. Seeing this, it hurts, but it helps. Sports fans were split. Some still clung to the myth. He's just a kid. Everyone makes mistakes. But more than ever, a different voice rose above. Being good at a game doesn't put you above the law. Highlight reels of Tyler's greatest plays were now stitched with courtroom audio. Speed, skill, then the judge's voice over a freeze frame of his stunned expression. Physics does not care who you are. For a brief, rare moment, the world stepped away from worship and toward reckoning. The message was brutal, necessary, inarguable. Inside the now empty courtroom, the air slowly lost its charge. Papers were stacked, mics were turned off, cameras were packed into cases, but the imprint of what had just happened remained. In the grooves of the benches, in the faint scuff mark on the floor where Tyler had shifted his foot, in the memory of a boy's quiet sob. Joseph Wapner rose from the bench. He didn't smile. He didn't look triumphant. Just steady. As if he understood that what he'd done foi simplesmente o que era suposto ser feito. Não extraordinário, just correct. As he left the room, an older man who had watched the entire hearing from the back stood awkwardly. He had no jersey, no sign, no camera. He just nodded toward the judge's retreating figure, a small, private gesture of respect. For many people, today had been on show. For him, e para os que milos, it had been something else, a proof that somewhere, even now, power could be told no, that fame could be made irrelevante, that the law, imperfeita, slow, humana, could still, sometimes, remind the world that lives are not scored like games. They end, they don't restart. E those que usamos recklessly do not always get a handshake and a headline. Sometimes they get a number, a cell, a closed door, e judge who looks them in the eye before it all begins e diz calmamente, without hatred, without haste, this is o que your choices cost. Now live with it.